sorry, we're recording.
It is Dave, it is Duncan, back from Metal Epidemic for another album review. And for this review, Duncan and I have been checking out the new album from San Diego, California sludge band 16.
San Diego, which I believe is Whale's vagina. You never watched Ron, like Anchorman, Ron Burgundy?
Overrated. The band's new album.
Give me a second. Do you hear that loud clicking noise? It's the sound of thousands of people changing opinions. Thanks, Dave.
I never got it when it came out, and I don't get it now.
But if one thing has told us about doing this recording and our friendship is you are
the young
more often than not wrong, and time usually proves me right. I mean, so
there's certain things I will not.
Wait 20 years, you'll go back to like it then. 20 years.
Anchorman is one. Freddy Got Fingered is another, and I'm sure there is more. The band's new album. Sorry about that.
I've never been more upset about anything in my entire life.
Guide
you
for
could
the
finger
Misguided.
my mum right now and I'd be angrier about the statement you just said and not catching you fingering my mum. There you go. That's it. What?
Anyway, the new album, Guide for the Misguided, will be released on February 7th via Relapse Records.
Hello, Relapse.
That's right.
It's been a while.
Yeah. Nearly 35 years on, 16 remains one of the most enduring, hardest sounding rock and metal entities.
Mental band. Yes.
What's going on? 16 frontman Bobby Ferry, almost said Brian Ferry, comments on Guide for the Misguided.
Different artist.
Totally different, yeah. The album came together after we wrapped the final mix of our last one, Into Dust. It's all about harnessing creative momentum when it strikes, and we've been in a kind of creative autopilot for about a decade. When inspiration is there, the rest seems to fall into place effortlessly. Thankfully, we're still driven to write and perform, even after all these years. There's no grander meaning behind it than simply following that primal urge to create, put your head down and just make something. Age has, of course, given us a fresh perspective. In the 8 years since Lifespan of a Moth, our lineup has shifted. We lost a singer, gained Alex on lead guitar and producer, and I slid into the lead vocalist rhythm guitar spot. Lyrically, we moved beyond the personal and inward grievances of our earlier work and embraced broader themes of conflict, like the hypocrisy of religion and its negative effects on the psyche. Musically, we're still grasping for the perfect riffs married to the most ideal arrangements. We're not afraid to lean into the stuff we love: noise, classic rock, hardcore, doom metal and thrash. We are well aware we are not reinventing the wheel, but lovingly fashioning something from us and basically for us, first and foremost. Guides for the Misguided closes with the soberingly titled Kick Out the Chair. While the track sounds like a culmination of a 35-year career, the band shows no signs of stopping. Although the road ahead looks bleak, 16's unrelenting trajectory continues upward. The album was recorded with Alex Jacobelli at Sun 6 Studios and produced by Alex Jacobelli and 16 guitarist Alex Schuster. So, we reviewed 16's previous album, Into Dust, back in 2022, which we both really enjoyed. And I think since they've kind of like solidified their lineup, which has been pretty solid now for about 10 years, we've heard this like kind of incremental growth in 16, which has been a real kind of blast to follow, especially on Into Dust, which heard Bobby Ferry take lead vocals for the first time for a full album. And now we move on to Guides for the Misguided, which to me, like when I was listening to it, I was thinking it feels like another kind of natural progression for 16. Like I feel like every time they release something, it just becomes that little bit more refined than the last thing they did. And like every album, they seem to kind of just dig as deep as they can and search for the most like teeth rattling groove riffs they can find. So You might need your mouth guard for this one. That's all I'm saying. This this album, yeah, like stylistically, it touches on all the kind of usual suspects of the style, genres, whatever, from doom to sludge and stoner, but with little flickers of like hardcore and punk and classic rock as well. And they marry those styles like so well together. Like it's just such a Moorish kind of blend and combination they have. Every section just feels like really like perfectly timed just to satisfy you. And like the transitions are just very seamlessly done, and so that you just can't help but like let yourself sink into this album and just you feel every groove and just thunderous riff that they have to offer. That opening track, god damn, I mean, like I was swinging my air guitar within seconds of that opening riff. So good. And it's just one of those albums that just keeps kind of flowing. Like there's no real part of the album that feels like wasted or like, you know, we're trying something uniquely or weirdly different on this release. It just, you know, it just feels like very comfortable, like when you're listening to this release. The themes are like kind of like fairly similar to previous releases, you know, like depression and personal struggle, and they mentioned religion and addiction and stuff. But I love that, like on tracks like Blood Atonement Blues, they delve a little bit further, and they get into characters like Errol the Baron, who was a cult leader, referred to as the Mormon Manson. And I feel like when I was reading the kind of press release about that track, I felt like the tone that they've got on that track is just like perfectly married up with the subject matter on it. I think the kind of, it's got this kind of really, it's much darker. It's got a kind of gloomy kind of feel to almost kind of like haunting kind of atmosphere in the guitars that just, it really breaks up the album after the first couple of tracks, which are more like direct and kind of just, you know, weighty sounding. We also get a bit of vocal melody on the track from Bobby, who has really opened up the band's sound even more over the years. In the previous album, obviously on Into Dust, that was his kind of first time doing vocals for the whole album, which he added melody into. And again, on Guides for the Misguided, we get some of that. His clean tone's great. Like it reminds me a lot of Tim Williams from Vision of Disorder or Blood Simple. And it's a really cool like contrast to add in on the album. It adds a real kind of hook to certain tracks, just, you know, making them kind of stick with you a little bit more afterwards. And that last album had, I think I said on the last album, there was a little bit of like a Burton C. Bell thing going on the previous album, just in places, in the kind of vocal melody. I think it was Ash and the Hourglass was the one that kind of really kind of stuck out. But I didn't actually get that as much on this release at all. There's still, obviously there's melody on this album, but just didn't really sound like that. Probably not as much melody on this as there is on Into Dust, which I really enjoyed. I was kind of hoping they might lean into that a wee bit more on this one, but maybe not. However, his harsh tone is killer. Like, there's no getting away from it. His voice is excellent. He's got a kind of, reminds me a little bit of like Steve Esquivel from Skinlab at times. He's got that kind of similar kind of rasp. Really cool texture. And he blends it as well at times, so it's not just like, here's my clean tone, here's my heavy tone. It does a bit of a mixture of both as well, which is really nice, so it never gets kind of repetitive. But when he pairs it up with one of those big fucking riffs, it is absolute fire. Like, some might say fire and brimstone, Duncan, I think. Which is an absolute banger of a track. Just so good. Like, the groove on that is killer. It's got some really cool like classic rock kind of guitar leads on it, which was really nice to give it a bit more of a wee bit more upbeat kind of feel, but it's also heavy as fuck at the same time. You get a bit of a almost kind of grungier, kind of punky, almost noise rock vibe coming through on Desperation Angel, which was a little bit different for them. It's a little bit quicker in pace, but has a little bit more nuance in the guitar work, a little bit more layered, but it works really well because they pair it up with Resurrection Day, which has this like really slow kind of crowbar type kind of groove to it. Big epic guitar solo as well, which was awesome. The album also contains a couple of covers. We've got Give Thanks and Praises, which was done by Bad Brains originally, and also a track called The Tower, which was done by Super Chunk. Give Thanks and Praises comes just before the album Closer, which is Kick Out the Chair, and then The Tower is listed more of a kind of bonus track at the end of the release. The Bad Brains track is like it's kind of like half speed version of it, so it's got really kind of like slow, kind of chunky groove, but then there's moments where they amp it up and they mirror that kind of punk tempo that the original has as well. And The Tower, which is by Superchunk, they were kind of, I think it was a 90s track, they were kind of indie rock kind of stuff from like North Carolina maybe, and they've kept the kind of the pace and the rhythm very similar to the original. A lot of the melody and the character sounds the same, but they've just added more of that kind of 16 weight to the track. I loved his melody on it. When I was getting to the end, that's obviously the last track, the bonus track, and when I heard it like with the melody, I was like, God damn it, I wish there was more of that on the album. Like I was just kind of like, oh man, just a little bit more melody would have been killer on this, but you know, that is what it is. Production wise, again, 16, they just seem to really nail that production. I know the band are heavily involved in all the side of the production of the album. Once again, this does not disappoint. It's got a real heaviness to it, this album, really dense sounding. But those lead parts really shine through. They have a similar balance to like a Crowbar in that respect, but I actually think 16 are even more consistent in their production. Everything just sounds really immaculate here. The drums are crisp, that bass just kind of thunders along underneath the guitars. Everything's really really audible in the mix. I love the sound of the album. So Alex Jacobelli and Alex from the band have done a killer job just kind of shaping the sound of this one. I really enjoyed it. So like another enjoyable album from 16 is where I'm going with this. Should have led with that, but they never really seem to disappoint for me. Like it's a genre and style that's very much within my wheelhouse. Like I loved all those like 90s bands like Skinlab and stuff, so a lot of this stuff really resonates with me. And I love the fact that these guys are still going, still churning it out, they're still touring. And they never really let up, just like finishing one album and then right into another. That's really cool. So another great release from 16 for me. What about yourself? What do you make of this?
Yeah, I mean, we were both, if memory serves, my feeling memory serves, we were both really high on that last album.
We were.
I think we came in, well, I know I came at 4.5. I don't know what you...
Same, I think. Yeah.
And it was because there wasn't really much you could pick fault in.
Yeah.
It was just a super consistent album. And surprise, Guides for the Misguided is a super consistent album front to back.
Yeah.
The pacing on this is fucking great. This is one of these ones, we talk about this a lot, Doom and Sludge. They are genres which bands can become a little bit lethargic in not only the songwriting but also the placement on an album. And without like a good producer behind it, tracks can go on a bit longer than they should.
Yeah.
Or the ordering can be a bit weird. 16 never seem to have that problem. They just seem to be really consistent at how they place their tracks and also the length. There is 2 songs over 4 minutes here, I think, which is Doom Sludge Goes is kind of unheard of, but they're not cutting out like big snarly tasty riffs. The album is awash with them. And with you vocally, I think this is fucking great. I love his tone. Tim Williams, definitely. There is a little bit of Crowbar in there. It's a little bit of down era Phil Anselmo, later day down era Phil Anselmo, specifically on tracks like Fortress of Hate, where there's like a kind of more melodic cadence behind the rasp. It's really, 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 really smart. Bass production on this is absolute filth. It's just like, once it reminds me of Dim, later day Dim, the bass production is always just like, oh fucking hell. But they mix things up. Blood Atonement Blues, for coming so early in the album, is a gamble, but it pays off dividends. You know what I mean? It comes off the back of 2 very heavy tracks and then sits into this smoky bluesy atmosphere and just very dark subject matter, but it kind of weirdly opens up the album early on and then allows them to be a bit more melodic on Fortress of Hate and then swing back in through Proudly Damned before, like you mentioned before. Fire and Brimstone, I think, brings back some more of that melody. And then you kind of get like a great double kind of 1-2 punch of Desperation Angel and Resurrection Day. I like the Bad Brains cover. I don't think it's needed on the album, if I'm honest. I very much like yourself preferred the Superchunk cover. That being said, if this doesn't exist on it, the Superchunk cover would stand out because of how much melody it is on it. So I kind of see why it's a bonus track and maybe not like Bad Brains cover being as it is fits more stylistically and tonally sounding with the rest of it. I do think, like yourself, they missed a bit of a trick here. I think his melody it's not unique, but it has a tone that makes it feel kind of different from other bands in this space. And I was expecting, it's not that like the previous album was awash with it, but I had a lot of it. And for it to be ramped as back or maybe focused in a different direction here, on the first listen was kind of, I'm not going to say a letdown, but it did kind of deflate me a little bit. However, on subsequent listens, I think this one holds up just as solid as the previous release. I get it, subject matter here is a little bit darker than the previous album, so maybe you don't want to be belting out melody. That's fine, but it's a secret weapon that they have, which does elevate tracks when you hear it for sure. So, I mean, it might just be if they've come right off the back of recording on the previous album, when they've swung into this one, it's just followed a tone and they've just, like what they said, what creative autopilot. Might just be a case of they lock into a sound and they just follow through with it and takes it where they want to go. There's very little I can add to what you've already said. If you are a fan of 16, this album ain't going to disappoint. If you're not a fan of 16, this is a great album to get into their sound. And if you are looking for something to scratch an itch, with big, weighty, like metal sludge riffs and like punishing production and awesome vocals, Guides for the Misguided ticks all those boxes. I mean, it says they've been on Relapse now for almost a decade, over a decade maybe, a long time, which means Relapse have faith in them, and you can see why they don't really put a foot wrong. Do I ever expect 16 to reinvent the wheel? Probably not, but they've been around long enough that they're one of the pioneers of this sound. So,
there's certain bands that you allow that for.
It's like when we're talking about Iron Monkey. Like when you are one of the like kind of the pillars of a genre, I'm not expecting you to come out with like jazz breakdowns in the middle of your tracks.
Absolutely.
Like you invented the sound. That's your sound. So 16 will probably keep on. They don't have any signs of even remotely slowing down, so I reckon we've still got a minimum of the next 10 years with them, and I for one am looking forward to that.
Yeah, for sure. Okay, final thing, scores for the new album from 16. I mean, I liked the little tweaks, the little kind of move towards something darker on this release. It's very much a 16 album, but they've like subtly touched on a few additional things on this one in terms of genre and ideas, just, kind of widen the scope a little bit. I think the melody on the previous album was a little bit more potent, and for me made it maybe a touch more memorable than this. But there are also some like absolute bangers on this album that will not disappoint if you're a fan of the band. And I mean, it's like kind of like we're saying, there are bands like Piss and Razors for example. Like I know when they're putting out a new album, I know exactly what I want from a Piss and Razors album, and I know what I'm going to get. And 16 are kind of in that same kind of category. I think I just need to see this band live. To be honest, it's the last thing that I need to hear from them. I actually was looking online to see like the last time they were over here. The last time they were in Glasgow, they played the Hug and Pint. About 4 years ago.
Right.
Which
so before COVID.
I think so. It's either just before or just after.
I'm just
not
after.
sure.
Possibly just after, because the Hug and Pint seemed to land a lot of weird. Relapse Records. That's right. It was like quite a few Relapse bands end up playing at the Hug and Pint for some reason.
Yeah.
So
that would have been awesome, because that is like a tiny venue.
You're practically on stage with the band.
Yeah,
and that's you standing at the back of the venue. So.
I'm hoping they return soon. I'd love to see these guys live. They're coming over to the UK. Definitely love to check them out. For me, this is going to be a 4 out of 5 for this album. What are you thinking?
I like this just as much as the previous album, even though it doesn't have the same level of melody, which, like yourself, I really, really enjoyed. I'm coming in 4.5 again.
Oh, nice.
I think it's just as good as the previous album in my eyes.
Awesome. So that is 16 guides for The Misguided, out on February 7th via Relapse Records. Links below at the band to the pre-order on Bandcamp. I'll put the links below. Check them out, have a listen, see what you think. That is the review. Thank you for checking out. We'll be back with another review very soon, but until then, take care. Speak to you soon.
Bye, everyone.